You sent in a fascinating collection of research all about neurodegenerative diseases and how nutrition plays a role.
Yeah, lots of interesting stuff.
We are diving deep into Chapter 9 of Integrative Geriatric Nutrition today,
Great chapter.
hoping to uncover some surprising insights about how, diet and lifestyle can impact conditions like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and multiple sclerosis.
Yeah, it's a really good chapter. It emphasizes, an integrative approach to these conditions,
Okay.
going beyond just medication,
Yeah.
understanding the whole person and all the factors that contribute to their well-being.
It seems like the medical field is finally catching up to what many people have known intuitively for years, right?
I agree.
That food is medicine.
Yes.
And speaking of food as medicine, let's start with Parkinson's. The chapter opens with a pretty startling statistic. Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological disease and is expected to double by 2040.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty stark reminder
It is.
of the urgency of finding effective ways to prevent and manage this condition.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating is that the chapter emphasizes the role of modifiable factors. We're not just talking about genetics here.
Right.
Things like oxidative stress, inflammation, even the health of our gut, all these things
The gut, yeah.
can impact the course of Parkinson's.
Okay, let's unpack that gut health connection because I think
Yeah.
it's something a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah.
We hear so much about the gut-brain axis these days.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean in the context of Parkinson's?
Well, imagine your gut and your brain constantly talking to each other, sending signals back and forth.
Okay.
That's essentially the gut-brain axis. And what we're learning is that the trillions of bacteria living in our gut, our microbiome,
Yeah.
can actually influence brain function.
It's wild.
In fact, the chapter mentions that comprehensive stool tests can provide a wealth of information
Yeah.
about your gut health and how it might be contributing to neurological problems.
So it's not just about digestion. The health of our gut can actually have a direct impact on the health of our brain.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And what's really helpful is that the chapter provides a table 9.1,
Okay.
that outlines specific interventions you can discuss with your doctor based on the results of these stool tests.
So it's personalized.
It's all about personalized care.
Personalized medicine seems to be a recurring theme in this chapter. But beyond gut health, there's another big factor that comes up. Toxins.
Yes, absolutely. The chapter delves into the link between environmental toxins and Parkinson's,
Okay.
particularly their damaging effects on our mitochondria, which are like tiny powerhouses within our cells. Think of them as the energy factories that keep our cells running smoothly.
So toxins basically sabotage our cells' ability to produce energy. What kind of toxins are we talking about here?
Well, heavy metals are a big one, things like lead and mercury.
Right, yeah.
Pesticides are another major culprit.
Oh, okay.
And even some common household chemicals can contribute to this toxic burden over time.
That's a little scary, It makes you wonder if we're all just walking around with these toxins building up in our systems.
It's definitely a concern, but the good news is that we can take steps to minimize our exposure. The chapter talks about choosing organic foods, using natural cleaning products, and even incorporating things like infrared sauna therapy to help our bodies detoxify.
Those are things we can actually do. It feels empowering to have some control over this. And speaking of things we can do, the chapter also mentions supplements.
Yes. There's a table 9.2, that lists some of the top supplements for supporting brain health in the context of Parkinson's. For example, CoQ10 is a powerful antioxidant that can protect those mitochondria we talked about. And fish oil is a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are crucial for brain function.
That table is going to be a great resource for our listener. Now, before we move on to Alzheimer's, I want to talk about the case study of Frank. It sounds like he experienced some real benefits just by making a few key lifestyle changes.
Frank's story is a fantastic illustration of how small changes can make a big difference. He cut out alcohol, adjusted his carb intake, and started intermittent fasting.
Wow.
And the result? Improvements in his sleep, digestion, and even his energy levels.
It's proof that we don't have to wait for a diagnosis to start taking care of our brain health.
Exactly.
We can take steps now to support our well-being.
Oh.
Now let's shift gears to Alzheimer's disease, which is another growing concern, especially with that looming healthcare crisis. projected due to increasing cases.
Right.
The chapter really emphasizes the importance of early intervention here.
Yeah. And it dives into this intriguing concept of different types of Alzheimer's,
Okay.
which I think is incredibly important for our listener. We're learning that it's not a one-size-fits-all disease. There's the inflammatory type, which is like a fire in the brain.
Wow.
Then there's the type driven by blood sugar imbalances. Think of it as the sweet type.
Okay.
There's also an atrophic type, where the brain is essentially shrinking.
Wait, so there are different root causes for what we call Alzheimer's disease.
Exactly. We also have a toxic type linked to environmental exposures, a vascular type related to blood vessel problems in the brain, and even a traumatic type, which can be triggered by head injuries.
That's a lot to unpack, but it makes me think about the role of genetics. Doesn't the chapter mention a gene that's linked to an increased risk of Alzheimer's?
Yes, it talks about the APOE4 gene. Now, it's important to remember that having this gene doesn't automatically mean you'll develop Alzheimer's.
Right.
But it does increase your risk.
Yeah.
Think of it as a predisposition. But here's the good news. Our genes don't determine our destiny. Lifestyle factors still play a huge role.
So even if you have a genetic predisposition, there are still things you can do to protect your brain health.
Precisely.
Knowledge is power.
And the chapter highlights the groundbreaking work of Dr. Dale Brivson,
Okay.
who has developed a comprehensive program for Alzheimer's prevention and reversal that focuses on lifestyle modifications. He actually provides a really helpful visual summary in Figure 9.1 that breaks down the key dietary changes and lifestyle strategies.
It's amazing to see how much potential there is in making lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
And speaking of resources, this chapter is packed with them. There are 2 more tables, Table 9.4 and Table 9.5, that list even more integrative interventions and helpful supplements for Alzheimer's.
Yes, it's a great resource.
And just like with Parkinson's, the chapter provides a compelling case study. This time, it's Frances, who was really proactive about her brain health, even though her initial tests were normal.
I love that she was so proactive.
Yep.
She didn't wait for things to get worse. She opted for a ketogenic diet and addressed some underlying gut issues she was having, and the results were remarkable.
That's great. It really reinforces the power of taking control of your health.
It's inspiring.
And speaking of the ketogenic diet, it's one of several therapeutic diets that the chapter explores in more detail. But before we dive into those, let's transition to our final neurodegenerative condition, multiple sclerosis. This one might be a little different, as the chapter acknowledges that older individuals with MS likely have it well managed by this point in their lives.
That makes sense.
So for MS, the focus is more on maintaining that good management and ensuring continued well-being.
Right.
I'm curious to hear how an integrative approach might play a role here.
You're right. It's about supporting overall health and quality of life.
Yeah.
And even though it's well managed, there's still room for optimization. The chapter discusses 2 very different diets that are gaining traction for MSTition, the vegan diet and the Walls protocol.
Those are 2 very different approaches. What's interesting to me is that both diets emphasize one crucial element: lots and lots of veggies.
You're right. It seems like increasing your vegetable intake is a universal strategy for better health, regardless of whether you choose a vegan diet or the Walls protocol.
So a win-win for veggie lovers out there. But what are some of the key differences between these 2 diets?
Well, the vegan diet, as you know, excludes all animal products. The chapter emphasizes, the importance of focusing on whole, unprocessed plant foods, rather than relying on processed vegan alternatives, which can be high in sodium and unhealthy fats.
That makes sense. It's about quality over quantity, even when it comes to plant-based eating.
Exactly. And with any restrictive diet, it's crucial to be mindful of potential nutrient deficiencies. The chapter reminds us to pay attention to things like vitamin B12 and omega-3 fatty acids, which can be harder to obtain on a vegan diet and may require supplementation.
It's all about finding that balance and making sure you're nourishing your body properly.
Yeah.
Now, what about the Walls protocol? What sets it apart from a traditional vegan diet?
The Walls protocol is fascinating because it's not just about what you eliminate, but also about what you add. It still prioritizes vegetables, a whopping 6 to 9 cups per day.
Wow. That's a lot of veggies.
But it also includes lean protein sources, particularly fish, a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes nutrient-dense foods like organ meats and bone broth.
So it's more of a modified paleo approach with a heavy emphasis on vegetables.
You got it. And This highlights a really important point. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. What works for one person may not work for another.
Right.
It's about finding the approach that best suits your individual needs and preferences.
I love that message. It's about empowering yourself to make informed choices. Speaking of choices, the chapter also touches on another interesting option for managing MS symptoms: cannabis.
Yes. It mentions that cannabis, particularly CBD oil, has shown promise in helping to alleviate symptoms like spasticity, pain, and, mobility issues. Now, this is still an evolving area of research, but it's exciting to see how plant-based therapies are gaining more recognition in mainstream medicine.
It's definitely a sign of the times. Now, before we move on, I'd love to hear about Kate's case study. It sounds like she took a truly integrative approach to managing her MS.
Kate's story is remarkable. After being diagnosed in her 30s, she decided to explore a wide range of options, combining conventional treatments with integrative therapies. She adopted a plant-based diet, addressed her vitamin D deficiency, and incorporated anti-inflammatory supplements into her routine.
And what was the outcome?
Well, over a decade later, she remains symptom-free and in remission.
Wow.
Now, while we can't say for certain that it was solely due to her integrative approach,
Right.
her experience highlights the potential benefits of taking a holistic view of health and exploring all available options.
It's so inspiring to hear stories like that. It shows that there's always hope and that we have more power than we often realize. Now, the chapter delves into some specific therapeutic diets that might be beneficial for neurodegenerative diseases in general.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through those?
Certainly. We already touched on the ketogenic diet with Francis's case study. Remember, this diet drastically reduces carbohydrates and increases healthy fats,
Right.
which essentially shifts the body's primary fuel source from glucose to ketones.
I've heard a lot about the keto diet, but I always thought it was more of a weight loss trend. Are you saying there are actual benefits for brain health?
Absolutely. Ketones are actually a more efficient fuel source for the brain than glucose. By switching to a ketogenic diet, you're not only helping to stabilize blood sugar levels, but you're also providing your brain with a super efficient energy source. Plus, it can help reduce inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity, both of which are crucial for protecting the brain.
So it's not just a fad diet. There's real science behind it.
Exactly. The chapter even highlights that the ketogenic diet can be particularly helpful for individuals with conditions like diabetes or insulin resistance,
Okay.
as these can directly impact cognitive function.
That's fascinating. What's the next diet on the list?
Next up is the anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet,
Okay, yeah.
a classic for a reason. This one focuses on antioxidant-rich foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and olive oil. It's all about fighting inflammation, which is a key driver of so many chronic diseases, including those affecting the brain.
The Mediterranean diet is always praised for its health benefits, but how does it specifically protect the brain?
It all comes down to those antioxidants. They help neutralize harmful free radicals, which are like little troublemakers that can damage brain cells. Plus, the Mediterranean diet emphasizes healthy fats like those found in olive oil and fatty fish.
You're right.
These fats provide the building blocks for healthy brain structure and function.
So it's like a two-pronged approach, providing the brain with the nutrients it needs to thrive while simultaneously protecting it from damage.
Exactly.
I like it. And what's the final diet they discuss?
The last one is the detox diet, which focuses on supporting the body's natural detoxification pathways. As we discussed earlier, toxins can play a role in cognitive decline, and this diet is all about helping the body eliminate them effectively.
Detox diets can sometimes get a bad rap, with images of extreme cleanses and deprivation.
Yeah.
What does a healthy detox diet actually look like?
It's not about starvation or crazy juice cleanses. It's about incorporating foods that support detoxification. Think leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, and plenty of fiber to keep things moving. It's also about reducing your exposure to toxins in your environment, like those found in processed foods and conventional cleaning products.
So it's more of a lifestyle approach than a restrictive diet. It's about giving your body the tools it needs to cleanse itself naturally.
Exactly.
This chapter is overflowing with information. Is there anything else we should highlight before we move on?
Yes, one more gem. There's a table 9.7, that lists key micronutrients that are essential for brain health, along with information about their dietary sources and deficiency symptoms. It's a fantastic resource.
I can already tell our listeners are going to have a lot of notes to review after this deep dive.
I agree.
It's amazing how much power we have over our brain health through simple lifestyle choices. Yeah, It is. It really is empowering to realize that, we're not just passive passengers on this health journey. We can actually take the wheel and make choices that directly impact our brain health. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the connection between nutrition and neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and MS. What stands out to me is that it's not about finding a magic bullet or a one-size-fits-all solution.
That is spot on. What's really exciting about this chapter is that it emphasizes, a personalized approach. It's about understanding your unique needs, your risk factors, and working with your healthcare provider to, create a plan that truly supports your well-being.
It's like we're moving away from that old model of doctor knows best and embracing a more collaborative approach to health where we're active participants in our own care.
Exactly. And the chapter provides so many, tools to empower you in that process. Those tables we talked about, listing, interventions, supplements, even key micronutrients. Those are all resources, you can use to start taking control.
I love that. It's like having a roadmap for navigating the complex world of brain health. Before we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message you want our listener to walk away with?
If I had to choose one takeaway, it would be this. Don't underestimate the power of lifestyle changes. We've seen how even seemingly small adjustments, like cutting back on alcohol or incorporating intermittent fasting, or simply adding more veggies to your plate, all these things can have a profound impact on brain health.
It's a message of hope.
Yeah.
It tells us that we're not powerless against these conditions.
Yeah.
We can take action and we can make a difference.
And remember, prevention is always better than cure. The earlier you start implementing these healthy habits, the better equipped you'll be to protect your brain for years to come.
That's such an important message. Now, we talked about personalized medicine earlier, and I'm wondering, given the fact that there are different types of Alzheimer's, for example, could this lead to more targeted treatments in the future? Could we see a day where interventions are tailored to the specific drivers of an individual's condition?
That's a really thought-provoking question, and it's definitely an area where research is heading. Imagine a world where, we can identify the precise mechanisms driving cognitive decline and then, develop therapies that address those specific pathways. It's an incredibly exciting prospect.
It's like the future of medicine is unfolding before our very eyes.
And it's a future where we as individuals have more knowledge and more power than ever before to, shape our own health outcomes.
We've only just scratched the surface today, but hopefully we've given our listener a solid foundation to build upon. So, to our listener, we encourage you to dive deeper into this chapter, explore those tables, do some additional research on the topics that resonated with you, and most importantly, talk to your doctor about what you've learned.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand about your own health, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions.
And never underestimate the power of staying curious.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible deep dive.